to it, and if it's real for them, it's right. But from a Christian perspective, it can be real and satanic, and that's the church's perspective.
What do you think? Yes.
John, I'd like to jump in here. I'm sorry for laughing. I know that you're very sincere in what you're saying. Years ago, when I first became involved in astrology, I went to a minister, a priest, and a rabbi, because I was very concerned about what I might be doing, particularly so since I've been involved in the legalization of the practice of astrology in Atlanta. And when I went to the rabbi, since you brought up the Jewish heritage, I'll never forget this. I went to his study, and he had a book, just like you see in old time, huge book, black book. He dusted it off. It was covered with dust. And he opened it up and dusted it off, and I thought, this is like in a movie. And he started translating, because I don't read Hebrew. And what he was translating was the definition, as I had studied it, of the planet Saturn. And he was going, well, he was going this way, actually. I go this way, but he was reading in Hebrew, right to left. And I said, what book is that you're reading? And he said, this is from the Kabbalah, which is the mystical, the spiritual book that only rabbis are permitted to use. This is taught to them in what they call the yeshiva, where the rabbis study. This is not given out to the common people. He said, this is the basis of the spiritual interpretation of Judaism. And then he asked me if I would do his horoscope. Now, in Judaism, I understand, they have, just as in Catholicism and just as in Christianity, a division. There are those people who are for it, and there are those people who are against it. When I saw that rabbi reading from this book, it blew me away. And then when he asked me to do his horoscope, I said, now, is this contrary to your religion? And this rabbi said, absolutely not, and quoted Rabbi Ben Akiva. Now, I don't know who Rabbi Ben Akiva is, but this man is a learned rabbi, and I take his word that it is not against Judaism.
Walter?
Forgive me for laughing. The Kabbalah is cursed by Orthodox Judaism. The Hasidic on it because they say it's blasphemy. The Old Testament wants nothing to do with it, and if he did that in Jerusalem, they'd stone him to death if he could get out alive.
Doctor, let me ask you.
Now let me finish. You can say whatever you want, but let me finish. The Kabbalah is a cursed tradition, condemned by the Old Testament, condemned by the New Testament, and by the Christian Church. The fact that the rabbi told you that, I know immediately he's not an Orthodox rabbi.
He is an Orthodox rabbi.
Then he would be unfrocked if they knew it.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back here, and I want to talk to our other two guests as well here. And we have a lady that's been a practicing astrologer for 12 years, and I'd like to ask her a question. We'll come right back. Karen, I want to come to you. You were a practicing astrologer for 12 years in the city of Chicago. You have broken down the definition of astrology into three groups. You think there are three kinds of astrologers that you saw as a practicing astrologer. Tell us what you were talking about.
Well, when I got into astrology, I was a skeptic, and I was challenged to just try it and see if it works. And I did, and it worked immediately. And so I delved into the study of it, and with one goal in mind, and that was to find out why it works, because it does work. And the farther along I got in study, the more people at the sort of, shall we say, upper echelons that I met in my area, the more it became clear that astrology that is done well is done in an altered state of consciousness. There are three levels of astrology, how to do astrology, and this was kind of common knowledge, not something perhaps you'd share with the client, but something that we all understood among ourselves, that there is psychic astrology, there's intuitive astrology, and there's bad astrology. Bad astrology is serve it up right out of the cookbook, computer can do it or you can do it, and let the chips fall where they may. You don't have to ask the person anything, you don't have to get to know them, you don't have to psych yourself up or anything. Intuitive astrology, you don't need to be psychic for. Sometimes these two overlap, but not necessarily. Intuitive astrology, I meet the person, I converse with the person, find out kind of where they're at, what their concerns are, you know. Is it relationships? Is it finances? Is it education? A goal in life? What's the story? And the more I talk with that person and look at their chart, when I have their chart in front of me, I have hundreds of indicators. Some of which, you know, they all say and indicate different things. Some of them are mutually mutually exclusive and contradictory, and others are supporting, self-supporting, or mutually supporting within that system. And so I can pull out any one of those or any combination of those that refer to what that person, where that person's at right now. And I can begin to read the chart of that person and deal with that person's character and possible options in life on the basis of that. I can ignore the ones that seem contradictory. Those are inoperative in the person's life right now, I say. Then there's psychic astrology. This is where it's at. This is where the dramatic successes are in astrology. This is where every astrologer I have ever known who has had dramatic successes say it has led. And that psychic astrology is a matter of you get your information about the person's character, about the person's future, about the person's options, however you want to phrase it, from your either your higher self, your God self, your Christ self, your spirit guides, discarnate entities, however you want to phrase it. There's an intermediary there. You do not get it from the information before you. That is simply to prime the pump. That is simply to give you something to talk about. It's a framework which you use verbally when you're communicating with the client.
Dr. Weldon, you actually went out to the American Federation of Astrologers where Maxine was speaking, I believe, as well as you listened to the other lectures that were out there, and you've written your book in light of what was said. Where did you feel that the emphasis was for the astrologers?
Well, the emphasis clearly was on the side of astrology being an occult practice. I talked with approximately 50 astrologers and interviewed about 10 among those 50 in some depth. I took 9 courses, and 8 of the 9 professional astrologers admitted to having spirit guides or to being influenced by spiritism. I examined approximately 300 of the 500 books that were on sale in their book tables, quite briefly, and without one exception, there was occult philosophy, at least to some degree, in all of them. And as far as I can see, what we're dealing with here is my objection to astrology is that it is, in essence, an occult system. Historically, it has been accepted as an occult practice. Today, many astrologers accept that it is an occult practice. Most objective independent scholars tie it into the occult. I think that the basic power in astrology, where the genuine self-disclosures, the revelations come from, is ultimately spiritistic. In fact, a number of former astrologers admit to this. Charles Stromer, in his book, for example, What Your Horoscope Doesn't Tell You, says that after 7 years as a practicing astrologer, his conclusion was this was where the real power came from. Almost every other person I talked to at the American Federation of Astrologers conference, it seemed, was into spirit guides. You have a number of other corroborating lines of evidence to indicate that astrology is not a science. It is an occult practice, and the reason for concern is that the occult is something that's very dangerous. I've studied the occult for 15 years, and I've written a 400-page text on the hazards of psychic and occult involvement. Today, most people do not know that they're getting involved in something occult because it's given a different name. And astrology is one of the easiest ways to get involved in the world of the occult. Indeed, almost all occultists, except astrology.
I need a definition. What do you mean occult?
To me, I define the occult as involvement with demonic supernaturalism.
Astrology is not occult in that case. There is no demon, there is no supernatural. And John, you didn't interview me at the AFA because I would not have said that.
Nor me, nor did you ever have any classes for me.
Nor